Drenched in blood, 14-year-old Anina B. lets out a gut-wrenching scream. "I'm dying! I'm dying!" Her desperate cries echo through the dark forest. But by then, it's already too late. Just moments earlier, Anina had turned on her best friend, Louisa G., stabbing her with such ferocity that Louisa collapsed and died at the scene. What could drive two inseparable friends to this point? How does a bond built on trust and closeness unravel into rage, despair, and ultimately murder? This shocking case shook a quiet Swiss town to its core, leaving behind more questions than answers. In this video, we'll uncover the chilling details and retrace the events that led to this unthinkable tragedy. We are in Switzerland, more precisely in Rudolfstetten, a small village with a few thousand inhabitants. Louisa G., a 15-year-old girl with Portuguese roots, lived there. Neighbors described her as a quiet, introverted child who tended to stay in the background. Friends said she was shy, polite, and almost reserved. Louisa was still in high school and showed little inclination toward conflict. She was known for her friendliness and reliability. "I can't imagine her arguing with anyone," said a close friend of the family. Louisa is at the age where your best friend means the world to you. In this case, according to the media, that friend is Anina. The two went to the same school. Despite her reserve, Louisa seemed to have a close relationship with her best friend Anina. The two are good friends, meet regularly, and love to go for walks in the woods together. The little ritual of taking a walk together every week was very important to them. But behind the facade of quiet village life, a dynamic was emerging that no one fully understood. Data protection reasons mean that many details remain hidden, but the tragedy casts a shadow over the entire village. At this point, no one suspects that Louisa's best friend will soon do something so terrible that words cannot describe it. Anina B. was 14 years old and lived not far from Louisa. On the outside, she seemed quiet, almost withdrawn. Friends described her as introverted, almost reclusive. She struggled to open up in social groups and was often perceived as a little different. Teachers reported that Anina struggled with her schoolwork. She often appeared sad or depressed, frequently withdrew, and rarely spoke about her feelings. Her family environment seemed stressful. Insiders suspected conflict and high expectations. In the weeks leading up to the act, she began showing noticeable behavior. She withdrew more and more, displayed signs of inner restlessness, and spoke about self-harm. Anina admitted that she often felt worthless and conflicted with herself. Psychologists often see such symptoms as signs of depression or other mental illnesses that can easily be overlooked in adolescence. The purchase of the knife, which she later used to stab, was, according to her own statements, originally intended to harm herself. A desperate attempt to cope with her inner pain. Her relationship with Louisa seemed to be an important source of support for Anina. Still, there were tensions that no one fully understood. Anina reported that she often felt misunderstood, even by her best friend. The act was apparently a sudden outburst of long-suppressed emotional pressure. The public and the media were quick to paint the picture of an unpredictable girl, but experts warn against judging the behavior of young offenders only on the surface. Instead, one should try to understand the circumstances and inner conflicts that drive them into such situations. Anina's behavior after the act, her desperate cries, I'm dying," showed that she herself was overwhelmed by the consequences of what she had done and was likely plagued by deep feelings of guilt. On May 20th, 2022, a cheerful birthday party was held at a family's home in Rudolfstetten. Teenagers had gathered to laugh, celebrate, and spend carefree hours together. The house was located not far from the woods, whose proximity at first seemed insignificant. But around 3:45 p.m., an eyewitness saw two girls suddenly and inexplicably run into the nearby forest. The girls were Luisa and Anina, who, as mentioned in the previous chapter, often enjoyed walking there. While the guests inside the house were still singing "Happy Birthday," a dark drama was unfolding outside. The two girls, most likely Luisa and Anina, disappeared among the trees and underbrush. About half an hour later, around 4:15 p.m., an argument escalated. Anina attacked Luisa with a knife. The exact circumstances remain unclear. Screams shattered the stillness of the woods. It must have been a violent struggle, during which both girls sustained injuries. Anina eventually fled toward a nearby forest cabin, crossing two small wooden bridges on the way. There, she collapsed, covered in blood. Her desperate cries, "I'm dying! I'm dying!" echoed through the air. With her hand badly injured and her body soaked in blood, bystanders initially assumed she was the victim, unaware that only moments before, she had fatally stabbed her best friend. Meanwhile, other passers-by found Luisa gravely wounded in the forest. Despite immediate resuscitation efforts, she succumbed to her injuries at the scene. Investigators later discovered numerous traces at the crime scene: bloodstains, broken branches, and footprints pressed into the damp forest floor. Together, these details painted the picture of a brutal confrontation, one that was not only physical, but also charged with devastating emotional intensity. The day after the incident, Anina was questioned by the police. Despite her own injuries, she appeared calm but emotionally shaken. She stated that she had acted out of anger at herself. "I did everything wrong," she repeated several times. What weighed most heavily on her was the feeling of having disappointed her family, especially because of poor grades and inner struggles. Anina explained that she had originally bought the knife to harm herself. When she then struck, she said she wasn't thinking about anything, and her friend had been completely taken by surprise. Psychologists point out that, with juvenile offenders, there is often a profound inner despair and sense of being overwhelmed. Anina had apparently been struggling for some time with psychological problems and social difficulties, which helped trigger this tragedy. In Switzerland, a special criminal law applies to juveniles. At the time of the offense, Anina was only 14 years old. This means that a traditional prison sentence does not threaten her. Instead, juvenile law primarily provides for educational and therapeutic measures. This can include placement in a closed youth facility or inpatient treatment in a child and adolescent psychiatric clinic. The focus is not on punishment itself, but on the attempt to stabilize the young person and give her a chance at a life without relapse. The maximum duration of such measures can extend, in serious cases, until the age of 22. In theory, this means Anina could remain in a closed institution for up to 8 years. In practice, however, it is regularly reviewed whether the measures are still necessary. Often, such placement ends much earlier, sometimes even before the juveniles reach adulthood. Swiss juvenile criminal law follows a very different approach than adult criminal law. The focus is not on retribution, but on rehabilitation. The system assumes that juveniles at this age are still highly impressionable, and that through pedagogical support and therapy, they can develop a new perspective. In summary, this means that Anina will have to take responsibility, but not in prison, rather in the form of measures aimed at education, protection, and therapy. Her future depends on how she handles this opportunity and whether she succeeds in freeing herself from her inner conflicts. The small community of Rudolfstetten has been deeply shaken by this crime. Parents, teachers, and neighbors are left wondering how such a tragedy could happen between two best friends. For Luisa's family, the loss is immeasurable. Memorial services and quiet vigils honor her memory and seek to bring comfort and peace to her loved ones. The case of Luisa G. from Barracon is more than just a tragic headline. It shows how fragile teenage friendships can be and how complex and vulnerable the minds of young people truly are. We'd like to hear your thoughts. What do you believe triggered this tragic conflict? Was it simply a chain of unfortunate circumstances, or the expression of deeper psychological struggles? And what are your views on the verdict in this case? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.